All right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Boca Podcast. My name is Nathan Holritz, and yes, I am your host. Happy Monday to you. If you are live streaming with us, it's good to have you here. And if you're not live streaming with us, make sure to come join us for a live stream occasionally. If you follow us at Boca, B-O-K-H Podcast, we'll keep you up to date with the upcoming live stream schedule. We actually have a couple this week, one today, another one coming up Friday. So make sure to mark your calendars, come hang out with us. And if you're not following us on Instagram, make sure to do it. You can keep up with the upcoming live schedule. And for anybody who is live streaming today, don't be shy. I want you to take advantage of this opportunity to join the conversation. I'm going to introduce my brand new guest here in just a second, but you can ask her questions. You can ask me questions. You can comment. You can send us funny emojis if you want to. Whatever you want to do to become part of the conversation. That's really one of the major benefits of these live streams. So please don't be shy. Take advantage. Say hello. Let us know where you're listening from, and definitely ask questions along the way. All right. Well, I want to introduce a brand new guest on the show today. My friend Katrina Cross-Daniels is here. Katrina, thank you for making time to come do the show with me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's a privilege to have you here. And so just to give everyone a little bit of context, you and I were both at the Cookout Conference not too long ago here in beautiful Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm looking outside because we have beautiful weather here today. Okay. But we had the opportunity to connect here at the conference, hosted, of course, by Tamaya Colvin. And you also did a presentation at the conference. I had the chance to listen in on at least part of that. And I was like, oh man, we should bring this to the show. Would you be willing to do the show? And you were gracious enough to come on the show with me. And so I really, truly appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and we've got a lot of people already chiming in saying hello. Sue is saying hello from Sun Valley, Idaho. And Sharonda is saying hello. We've got from Dallas, Texas. Awesome.
Hey.
And Tamaya is saying hello from Facebook. Hello, Tamaya. Thanks for saying hello. Thanks for listening in. And thanks, Tamaya, ultimately for connecting us, too. I think, Katrina, you and I originally met at one of the Cookout conferences maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, a few years ago. And then you came to Detroit at a conference here. And we met here. So, yeah.
There's so many conferences that I've been to over the number of years. I get the opportunity to meet so many wonderful people. But I will say again, and I've said this before on the show, the Cookout Conference creates a sense of community and family in a way that most other conferences in the industry don't. And I've been super privileged to be a part of it. And again, it's been incredible to have the opportunity to get to know you as well. And for those listening and watching that don't know you, will you do me a favor and just briefly introduce yourself and introduce your brand as well?
Yes. Okay, so I'm Katrina Cross-Daniels, a photographer here in the Metro Detroit, Michigan area, where I specialize in boudoir and wedding photography. I'm also the owner of KCD Studios, and that's where my ladies come in and have their empowering sessions and capture those great images that they love to share at their homes.
And, I have to give you props right off the bat, because a lot of times when I ask photographers to share about their brand, it's easy to get, and I told you actually before we started the show, I'm a wordy person. I say too many words sometimes, but it's easy to get caught up in that process of trying to tell somebody about your brand and spend like 5 minutes introducing the brand. And people are bored after like 30 seconds or probably 15 or 20 seconds for that matter, right? You summed it up so beautifully though. Is that something that you practiced?
I definitely practiced that because I don't want to be wordy, and I just want to go straight to it and say what I need to say and get out of there.
That's it. And it sounds funny, but I think that's actually really great advice that we're starting the show off with today. And that is exactly what you're saying. Say what you need to say and get out of there, because we all know that everybody, including myself, has a relatively short attention span. And we might enjoy talking about ourselves, but how much do other people want to hear us talking about ourselves, right? So how can we get to the value proposition, if you will, and then ultimately be able to move on to more important things. And so to this end though, I want to pop this up on screen really quick for everybody listening and watching. So if you go to KatrinaCrossPhotography.com, just like it sounds, with a K, by the way, Katrina with a K, Katrina, crossphotography.com. And then you can actually link to Katrina's site, to her boudoir site, but we'll pull this up here as well. And you can check that out. Portraits to Empower the Everyday Woman. You Deserve to Be Photographed Beautifully. Detroit Luxury Intimate Boudoir Photo Studio Experience. Managed to get all the SEO words in there, Katrina. Well done.
Yeah, Tamaya taught me well.
And yeah, shout out to Tamaya and everybody from the cookout community. And it looks like we've got a bunch of people logging in actually. So Renee is saying, hey y'all. And Christina actually is saying hello from Atlanta on YouTube. Hey Christina, good to have you here. And we've got a number of people logging in. For some reason, Facebook seems to be blocking the names of those who are saying hello. Elevator pitch for the win is the comment. And then another person saying absolutely beautiful website. Yeah, and fully agree. And then, oh, look, it's Frida Funny. Frida's saying hello from Facebook. Hey, Frida, thanks for saying hello. So thank you all for joining in the conversation. Those of you that are live streaming with us today. And again, don't be shy as we get into the content today to ask questions, to comment on the conversation at hand. Denitra says hello all from YouTube. Hey, Denitra, thanks for saying hello. And let's see. Oh, look, Portia is saying hello from Facebook as well. Thanks for saying hello. Got a good crowd here today. This is wonderful. Well, on that note, yes. Katrina, and to our point about keeping the conversation flowing, let's get right into the content. And I had the opportunity to hear you talk a little bit about overcoming adversity and continuing to build a business despite that adversity. And this is something that I think all photographers in one form or another can relate to. But will you just kind of sum up some of the challenges that you face as a photographer before we get into the practical application?
Yes. I just wanted to share that at the conference, we're not going to have a repeat because I had a big cry fest at the conference telling my story. But to sum it up, I basically shared how as creatives, we go through so much, but we suffer in silence. There were major adversities that I went through personally myself, and others that I know what they went through. So for me, I went through an unexpected divorce. I also quit a 9-to-5 job in the middle of a pandemic. I opened up a new studio, and I actually had 2 hand surgeries back to back, and with all of this, I didn't stop. I still had to show up and capture beautiful weddings, even though I was crumbling inside.
Why do you think it is that we, you said suffer in silence, and that's a really interesting phrase. I know I have a tendency of doing this too, despite my tendency to talk a lot. There's a lot that I hold on and process inside. Why do you think we have that tendency as photographers, or maybe just humans in general?
I think it probably all boils around, for me, it was embarrassment. I think we just don't want people to see us in that way. For me, being married and the amount of years that I was married, a lot of people looked up to us as a couple, and just to go through it when it was unexpected for me, it was embarrassment. So I think for people, they just don't want to share and have people look at them differently.
That's really interesting. So my partner, business partner and life partner, and I split. It's been, I guess, about 10 years ago now. And I had a lot of apprehension about how people in the photography industry would see me as well, honestly. And I come from a pretty religious family as well. And so I also was concerned about how my family was going to see this decision and this experience. And I had a really touching moment. I'll probably get emotional talking about it. You talk about crying. But my grandfather, who is now 101, almost 101 years old, actually. My grandfather at the time, he got in the car. This was not too long after all this had happened, and he knew what had gone on. And we're sitting in the car. I'm sitting in the driver's seat. He's sitting in the passenger seat. And I began to talk about the situation. I felt like it was the elephant in the room. I need to address it with him specifically. And I started to talk, and he put his hand on my leg, and he just looked at me and said, "Nathan, it's okay. It's okay."
Yeah.
And it's funny how I think we kind of build this stuff up in our mind, and we project it out and assume that people are going to see us this way or that way, or they're going to judge us this way or that, and ultimately make it more complicated for ourselves at times than need be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's just like, I think too, people just you may not want to, go through the questions that you assume people may ask you, and the hard conversations that you have to now have, like, well, what happened, or we didn't know, or we thought it was this or that.
Yeah.
So I think it's just avoidance. And so for the longest, I never shared it. Actually, at the cookout was the first time I expressed, and told anybody out loud my story, because I really haven't never shared it.
Well, I appreciate your transparency, certainly at the cookout, and I saw the I guess the genuineness and the authenticity in that, and ultimately, you're so gracious to allow us to hear your story, because that then ultimately allows us to learn not only what you went through, but how you overcame it, and ultimately went on and have continued to build your photography business. And we're going to talk about some of that practical application here in just one second. Dawn said from Facebook, we are always expected to have it all together. And yeah, I don't know. I think maybe that may be true in some regards. And in fact, I'll kind of add to that. Alexia actually said, from Facebook, when we are seen as leaders, we tend to suffer in silence. We don't want others to see us in some way fail. Yeah, also true. But I'm wondering, kind of going back to Dawn's statement, and we'll touch on this and then continue, Katrina. But she said we are always expected to have it all together. I wonder how much of that is true, and then how much of that is us projecting that notion onto others. Do you think people really do expect us to have it all together?
In a sense, I do, but I think it's just expected. Like when they see us, like we're always smiley. I mean, even though some of us are natural smilers, but when we're like at events and we're at our functions, they only see this one side.
Right.
So you can't go and they see you all falling apart and everything. So I think we're just expected that everything is fine, because when people see us, we're fine.
Yeah,
we don't share that.
I can see what you mean, but this is also a great reminder, and apologies, Facebook, I guess, with their privacy policies have limited my ability to see some of these names, but a Facebook commenter says it's okay to be human, it's okay, and that's actually a beautiful reminder, and I think one that we all need, so thank you for that, and shout out to whoever that might be. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to pull that name up. Patrick from YouTube said, how timely. He had to euthanize my dog of 12 years last night. Now I have to go shoot someone in an hour, photograph somebody in an hour. And yeah, it's tough to have to go through that. And Patrick, I'm sorry to hear that. It's tough to have to go through situations like this and ultimately have to move on despite them, right? And Katrina, I know that's what you're here to talk about today. Renee said, feeling ashamed is what keeps people suffering in silence. And yeah, I can feel you on that, Renee, as well. Alexia says it comes from from the family dynamics and spill over into our work lives. And yeah, absolutely, I hear you on that. So it sounds like a lot of people can relate to these feelings, these experiences. And what I'd love to get into, Katrina, is how you, I guess, moved beyond them, right? Because it's one thing to suffer, to go through difficult circumstances, to suffer, and it's easy to get stuck in that place. But the question is, how do we move beyond that? As an individual, certainly, but then also as a business owner, and continue to build our business. And one of the first kind of steps in that direction that you talked to me about ahead of time was the significance of finding a support team. What does that mean to you? What did that look like for you on a really tangible level?
Ooh, okay, I would say, and just to piggyback going into this question, is a lot of times too, why it's an issue for us is because nobody really talks about this, right? All of us are creatives out here, but I never really saw too many people sharing their stories. And a couple people that I did see was kind of my help and my support system when I went through my adversities. And one of them was a photographer friend, LaJoy Cox, and the other one was Tamaya. They had both went through similar situations as me. So I was able to privately reach out to both of them and just to get some encouragement. And actually, like 10 days after this happened in my life, I had to actually go shoot a wedding. And I was not strong enough to do it. I didn't think I was. And I actually called LaJoy and was like, look, I'm on my way to this wedding. And I am falling apart. I was literally in tears driving down the road to go shoot this wedding. and I needed that talk. And I don't know if I was looking for her to give me a pep talk to get through it, or to say it's okay to bail out. So I would say definitely finding your support system and your team is a very valuable tool that we need, and that can be in different places. It can be with family. If you have family members that you are close enough with, that you feel that you can share and not be judged. And it can also be friends, because like I said, we stated how you can be embarrassed, and reach out to people. It's a hard thing to do. So find your support. And mine was those two people, my family, and then ultimately my cohort from Tamaya Momentum Mastermind. They helped me tremendously, like be vulnerable and be able to talk and share.
How do you? It's, I don't know. I think in a world in 2022 where it's easy to call somebody a friend because we're acquaintances with them, or we're aware of them because of Facebook, various platforms and social media. How do you decide who to trust to open up to?
I think you have to look at someone's character for themselves, right? When I saw the two of them share their stories and how open that they were, and I didn't really see a lot of other people doing that, they made it comfortable for me to feel that I can call them and just see how did they do it, because we're all in this industry together and we all gotta work and serve our clients, and I just needed some help at the time, and they made me comfortable.
That's interesting. Yeah, there's it seems like a fine line between sharing for the sake of vulnerability, transparency, openness, and then kind of oversharing. I think some people have a tendency of just kind of throwing everything out there, right? But there's something significant about sharing, which is you become relatable. Like if you always function, and I'm kind of preaching to myself here, honestly, but if you always function with this kind of slight wall up, even if it's a semi-transparent wall, there's a wall there, like where you're protecting yourself and you're only sharing so much, people can only relate to you so much. So you were talking about the significance of finding somebody who is willing to share their own struggles, what they've gone through, and then what they did to overcome them. I think is a really important element of that. But that sense of transparency from somebody else enables us to be able to go to them. And for everybody listening, and I think it's a really good reminder, if we want to be a really great friend, be willing to share, be willing to be open. People will see that and naturally be drawn to you because you become more relatable that way.
Yeah, and that was my goal right now, because I'm like, okay, I didn't really have a whole lot of people that I could relate to with this. And I know I've been dealing with this for a minute myself. And I'm like, I know that there's others. Actually, I remember at the cookout last year, a few of us had went out to dinner, and this was like another aha brain opening for thought process for me, because it was several of us who went out to dinner, and I think all but one was divorced or was separated or was going through it. But we all talked at the table about it, but nobody was talking out loud about it. And I was like, see, I'm not the only one. And we're all suffering in silence. And it just needs somebody to bring it to the table and bring it out. And like, let's talk about these things. Because it's not just divorce. I mean, there's other adversities that people are going through and dealing with. So we just need to be able to have a platform to just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. The environment, the forum to talk about it. Portia says, finding your tribe is so important. Or it's important so that you don't feel like you're facing life all alone. That's where I am. And yeah, Portia, I feel you on that. Denitra says there is a difference in trauma sharing and someone trauma dumping, and having vulnerability partners is so great. Yeah, and there is a fine line. I know it's going to be different for different people. Dawn says we absolutely don't. We have to put on that face and move forward, even if through tears. And absolutely, we do run into scenarios in life where we have to kind of push forward. And again, we're going to get into some more of that practical application here. Frida says people can't help with what they don't know. And yeah, that's such a great point. And again, our willingness to be open and vulnerable means other people can come to us, and creating that safe place is also really important. You mentioned LaJoy Cox, and actually LaJoy's been on the Boca podcast, episode 516, Cracking the Code to Making More Money. And we'll link to that in the show notes. And then of course, Tamaya, in addition to, of course, starting the Cookout Conference, we've had the privilege of having her on the show here as well. And episode 547, Let's Simplify Pricing for Photography. And we'll link to both of those episodes in the show notes at bocapodcast.com. And Ashley, she says, yeah, trauma dumping is what I'm scared of. And I am too, honestly. Actually, that's kind of why I bring this up, because there is something to be said for vulnerability. And then there's also just kind of unloading for the sake of attention grabbing. What do you think the balance is, Katrina, when it comes to that?
I mean, and I think the two is why some people don't share, because they fear that they're going to be dumping or looked at as, trauma dumping versus just being vulnerable and sharing their story. So I think we have to just, if somebody is willing to share or dump, just be a listening ear for them, because it took them a lot to get to that point to even let it come out their mouth, because I held it. I know I held it for so long, and even and I go to church all the time, and I didn't even tell, like, a lot of my church members had no idea. Eventually they caught on to where he at, like they don't see him there, and started asking questions. But I was just, too embarrassed to everything to even talk about it. So just be a listening ear when somebody is willing to share.
That's a really, really great reminder, actually, and good reminder for me, actually, honestly. So thank you for that. And thanks, everybody, for chiming in and continuing to share your thoughts. The next principle, though, that enabled you to continue to move on, especially as a photography business owner, Katrina, despite the various challenges you were facing, was automation. And I'm so glad that you bring this up, because this tends to be a little bit of a nerdy topic. It's not a sexy topic. It's not one that a lot of people go to when it comes to content that we're putting out there. But the reality is, every single day as photography business owners, we are in some type of workflow. We can choose to create that workflow intentionally and create a really efficient workflow, and certainly leverage automation. I know you're going to get into that. Or we can just kind of let workflow happen to us. Like, we just react to whatever's going on in our photography business. That latter option ends up becoming super haphazard and chaotic and stress inducing. And it certainly doesn't enable us to have the freedom, the flexibility when we're facing challenging circumstances to be able to step away from our business and focus on what we need to. Can you comment on the significance of this idea of automation, especially in all that you faced?
Yeah. And I would definitely say that it's a process to get to the other side, right? And to the healing part of things. And everything was not perfect right off the back of getting things together. So I would say initially, I was that one that was, as things was coming in, I'm trying to catch up and do it. And I was falling apart, and things was getting left by the wayside, and it just wasn't good. But as I started trying to prepare myself and get ready for the challenges I had ahead of me, I knew automation was it. So, when you have a website that, you get that thing together, and the SEO is tight on it, and, your people are coming in, your contact form is there, you don't really have to do much. Like, they're coming through, even though, like, I wasn't in a headspace to really deal with a lot of things, but they were coming through, and then my systems was in place. I use HoneyBook. So somebody come in, they getting automatically into the workflow process of there. They're getting the emails. I'm able to have proposals and invoices sent out, all without me having to be like so hands-on when I really wanted to be hands-off. So, and there's other systems that came along, throughout the process that helped me with that, to make things easier. I'm loving after shoot, where you can barely have to call, your images and just put them there. And, how Fundy just throw your images in there and it designs an album. Mostly every one of my clients get an album. So to be able to have that where I can just go in there and in minutes it's done, was just a awesome feeling for me.
There's the automation, I guess, in the end is beautiful when it works. But I think something that gets in the way of a lot of photographers' tendency to move in the direction of automation is the work up front, right? We can talk about workflow all day long. I know that a lot, if not most photographers, if they heard me talking workflow, they'd be like, oh, that's nice. And then they'd shut off, right? Because it's not something that we're naturally drawn to as creatives. We got into this to be photographers and artists. But the reality, again, is that we all deal with workflow. And so we can either choose to be intentional creating something that is efficient, that involves automation, or we can just kind of let it happen to us. So to my original point, it takes some time, some effort, some energy to set up the systems for the sake of automation.
Yes.
Will you talk a little bit about that? I mean, did that keep you from getting started, for example, with Honeybook, that just knowing you're going to have to spend some time setting it up? What was that like?
Absolutely. I ran from automation. I just dreaded it. Like it just seemed like it was such a daunting task to do that upfront work. But the more and more that I was feeling like, I was stressed out. Like I'm dealing with every client as they came through the door. I'm doing whatever step they needed. So I was always just like it grounded in work. Like I never was able to lift my head up. So I had to figure out how can I make this and limit some stress for me. And with losing the marriage, I had to say to myself, like, okay, if I'm losing my marriage and part of it was due to me running a business, I can't let both fail. I can't let the marriage fail and my business fail. So I needed to say, nope, you have to get it together, do the work, take the time to get things set up so this system can work for you. Because having a system that can work when you're not mentally ready yourself to put in the work, it's just going to be a beautiful thing. And that's what I wanted.
And then, of course, the wonderful thing as well is once you come out of these challenging circumstances, just regular day-to-day life minus those additional adversities, having that automation in place means we have even more freedom, more flexibility as business owners.
Absolutely.
And I don't know about you, but that's a big part of why I got into business for myself anyway, right? I want to be my own boss. Like that's one of the biggest appeals. And I'm sure a lot of photographers can relate to that. And Alexia actually said, what's the name again that creates the albums? And that's Fundy, Alexia. And I'll give a shout out to Andrew Funderburg, who has also been on the show, actually. I'll pop this up on screen, episode 357. We'll link to his episode in the show notes as well at bokehpodcast.com. But it's Fundy, the Fundy software. And man, I know they've created a beautiful thing over there. A lot of fans. So we'll link to that in the show notes as well. But thanks for that question. Well, let's keep going then, and actually want to, I guess, move on to a conversation around. It's interesting the way that you phrase this, but you said it's important to say yes to yourself, to bet on yourself. We've got the support structure in place. We're beginning to leverage automation in our workflow to free us up to focus on facing these challenges that we have coming up. But what does it mean to say yes to yourself, to bet on yourself? How did this look in your life?
Well, I would say for me, what that looks like is, again, we're talking about adversities, right? So, going through different challenges in our lives. And I had a dream that I wanted to be a full-time photographer. And I wanted to leave that 9-to-5 job that I had. But dealing with the adversities of losing the marriage kind of stopped my dream from happening when I wanted it to happen. I could no longer say, okay, because I was just actually getting ready to leave my 9-to-5 when everything fell apart. So I would say saying yes to yourself means, still following your passion. I wasn't going to lose both, like I said. And then I came up with the 4 P's, where I had to prepare, plan, pursue, and pay attention. And and what that means is, preparing for those next steps, planning all the details it's going to take, to bet on me. And to pursue is like to execute. And pay attention to everything that's happening around me. Like, I needed to know and be alert. So that was it.
I think as you're talking about this, I can imagine, especially being surprised by a divorce, it's natural that we feel disconcerted, that we feel a little bit of like a sense of insecurity, certainly unstable, and that life just kind of got shaken up, right? And so
absolutely,
it would be easy again to get stuck there and to get caught up in that, but you're making a beautiful point, which is that that's actually the prime time to bet on ourselves for the sake of being able to move forward. I know that a lot of photographers just generally speaking, deal with insecurity, a lack of confidence in themselves. What would you say to a photographer that says, Katrina, I don't have that kind of confidence that you're talking about that will let me continue to move forward, that will trust in not only my passion and what I was trying to accomplish in the first place, but ultimately be able to accomplish that. What would you say to them?
I would say in the beginning I didn't have it either, and that's okay. It takes time. Like you have to just still give yourself grace, and and take that time to build yourself up to get to that place. Like don't feel like it's something that you just have to have right away, because it's not. I was definitely the one who going through a divorce in the middle of everything that was happening with me. Insecurity came in hard. Like, I already had insecurities about myself personally, and that just added to it. Like, I've shared with you how things I didn't like about myself, and so that brought those insecurities more. Like I started looking at, and I'll share it here, where I just kind of focused on the way I looked, and my big teeth and my big thighs, and I got big eyes, and everybody would say, oh no, it's this and that, but I saw all of that. So I just say it takes time to get to that point where now you're ready to, like, no, forget everything else, and now it's time to work on you and bet on yourself.
This is something that I've been kind of working on learning, just even in the last month or two. I'm realizing, I guess, the importance of small steps. Like in a situation where we're not confident, either like we're insecure about our abilities, we're insecure about this idea or this plan that we have. Do we move forward? Do we not? We're unsure whether or not we can accomplish a particular goal, whether it's health related or related to our business. And what I realized is the significance, and actually there's some pretty significant science behind the way that our bodies respond to taking small steps and having small accomplishments, whether it's, on a business level, like checking something off the list, feeling like you got something done, you accomplished something, even if it's small. But even the same thing with regards to our health. I went and walked for 10 minutes today. I didn't try to go to the gym for 3 hours because that would be way overwhelming. But I got out and I walked for 10 minutes. And then tomorrow I walk for 15. And the next day I walk for 20. These small steps and being able to check off those small steps and implementing those consistently, do you feel like that would help encourage that sense of confidence?
I think so. I mean, when we take the time to focus on those smaller tasks, that's gonna help you tremendously, because when we look at the big picture, it's too overwhelming for us to get to where we want to go in
Yeah,
our
that's it.
goals. So if you take it in smaller chunks, it definitely will help you in that matter.
Yeah, that's exactly it. When we take on if we look at that big project or that big goal, and we're like, there's no way, there's just no way
Yeah,
I
you
can do
defeat
that.
it. You
Yeah,
defeat it before you even start.
small pieces, and yeah, we hear a lot
Yes.
about that idea of looking at the end goal and then working backwards and being able to break it down into small pieces. But that carries a lot of significance. And again, there's some interesting science actually behind all of this, where our body has a positive physiological response. The dopamine, people talk about dopamine quite a bit, but I think it's been misunderstood in some ways. We actually get a dopamine response from having even those small accomplishments. And the cool thing about that dopamine response then is it encourages us to want to do more. A lot of photographers will get stuck. They don't take the first step, and because of insecurity or whatever other reason. But what they don't realize is that if they are willing to take even a small first step and accomplish that small first step, it'll give you, and certainly the dopamine hit on a physiological level, but the confidence ultimately to be able to then take the next small step, and then it continues to build on itself in a really beautiful way.
Absolutely. I definitely saw some small steps in my life that the looking at it on the other side, how the beautiful side ended up surfacing. It took time, but I saw that happen with me,
That's cool.
taking those small steps.
And I hope that ends up being an encouragement for everybody listening in and watching, because I think we all need that. And actually, you talked about something beautiful, and this is a really great segue into the next point that you made to me, which is to kind of rediscover what makes us smile. When we're dealing with stressful circumstances and it seems like everything is just kind of negative and overwhelming and frustrating and stressful, having the opportunity to take a break from that and experience something or do something that ultimately makes us smile, that makes us happy, is really important. What did that look like for you
Yes.
practically?
Um, and again, smiling was something that was, far from my thought process for a while. And if you was at the cookout and you were in my class, if you saw the video that I played, um, there was a lot of tears. So to finally get to a place where you can smile, and a lot of that was, not only the family support and friends that I had spending time with, with the loved ones, but it I had an opportunity to rediscover who I was and to take care of me, because I got lost, and not only in the marriage but in myself, where I let all those fear and insecurities kind of come in on me. So just rediscovering who I was and taking care of me is what that looked like. I mean, all my kids were gone. I was able to focus on just me for once in my life, because I've always focused on everybody else. I've always been a mom, a wife. I got married young, and in my life. So I actually had for once just focus on you. And through that discovery of finding me is what I decided, how I'm not the only woman who feeling like this. There's other beautiful women out here. And so that's what kind of helped birth boudoir photography for me. Like, how can I also help other women get to this other place where we embrace ourselves and just, rediscover us?
The conversation around quote unquote who we are, finding ourselves, our identity. This is a very popular one in our culture, and I know it means different things to different people. When you talk about finding yourself again outside, does that mean outside of the identity which was being a wife, or outside of the identity which was being a mom, just being an individual human being, kind of realizing what that looked like?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Like, embracing, you as a woman, you as a man, our sexuality, our sensuality, just the whole process that you get lost sometimes in a relationship, in a marriage, other adversities that can have you lost. A lot of people are caregivers for their parents or their significant others. There's a lot of loss and hurt out here that other people are going through, that sometimes you just can't focus on yourself, because you're so consumed with having to care for or deal with something. So to finally just have a moment where, hey, you can breathe, you can cry, you can just enjoy you. It takes you to another point where that's where that rediscovery kind of comes in, of the one I'm talking about.
Well, and I think it's beautiful too that then you took that experience, and I think we maybe even talked about this at the cookout, you and I, but you took that experience and translated it into your work. And I know we pulled this up earlier, but I'll do it again. Your boudoir brand, Portraits to Empower the Everyday Woman. I know that this wasn't a kind of a talking point that you sent to me ahead of time, but will you speak just briefly on the significance of taking what you learned from your experience and translating that into your photographic work?
Yeah, I would say for me, because I did get lost in myself, and I was not happy with a lot of things about me, and I had other people kind of make me feel that way. So when you have something that's happening to you, or someone is making you feel that you're not this beautiful soul, and to finally discover that for yourself, it's like, okay. And I saw like different women would come to me and they would share their stories with me, and I would see them like just blossom right in front of me with the photography that we do. And it wasn't like and I think my boudoir photography is a little like classy photography, things that they want to put on their walls in their homes. And they would just walk away from me just feeling so inspired, so empowered, because they've been just like me, sheltered, not feeling that they can, embrace themselves. And they just walk away, and they love the experience. Even the maternity moms, they come out to me, and it's just a beautiful experience.
Well, and as you were talking there, for anybody who's not looking at there or watching the live stream, I was just scrolling through Katrina's some of Katrina's beautiful boudoir work, and you're absolutely right too. It's a very classy, very classic style, Katrina, and beautiful. So I have to give you props for that. But we'll make sure to link to this, of course, in the show notes at bocapodcast.com for anybody who isn't on the live stream. One last kind of question or talking point here, Katrina. You mentioned, kind of the last thing that you mentioned to me was the significance of finding professional help when we're dealing with these difficult circumstances. And it's one thing I think it's really important, actually, if I can speak for myself anyway, to learn how to develop a certain amount of self-awareness and process some of these things ourselves, but also having that outside help, not only from our community, but also from a professional, can be really helpful as well. What did that look like from you? And what would you recommend to our listeners as far as finding a person that's a good fit in that regard?
So in that area, I would say it definitely can be a challenging area. Everyone that you find may not be the right person for you. Definitely find someone that values your time. I went through like 3 therapists, and a lot of that is another thing we did in silence. Like, I didn't really share with people that much that I even was seeing a therapist when I was doing it. But, one didn't value my time. So, you move on from there. Find someone that you feel comfortable with, that allows you that vulnerability where you want to share. And make sure that you're ready. You're ready to be open and vulnerable, because if you're not, then it's just a waste of the process. Like, you have to be ready to move forward, to get in that space, because you definitely have to be open and pay attention to any red flags that you get from speaking to any professional. Like I said, everyone is not there for the right things, but there are a lot of great professional therapists out there.
Without getting into specifics, just generally speaking, what would you say was the biggest value that you got from going to a therapist? And one of the reasons that I asked this is even I've experienced kind of that apprehension. There was one point in my life, actually, when I was going through some stuff with my previous partner, that I had that apprehension of going to a therapist, not because I wasn't open to the idea, but more because I thought, like, what are they going to tell me that I'm not already aware of, which was a super egotistical mentality to have, obviously. But what was the biggest value that you got from being able to go to a professional versus what you got from others that you might have been able to talk to?
I would say one of the things was I was able to see where everything wasn't just on one other person. It made me look at some things about myself that I had to recognize and be truthful with for me. So that was one thing. And it also, I got out of it to make sure that, hey, I am worthy, I am deserving. And I created these ebook, this 52 love letters. Like, every week I send out a love letter, and it was into 4 segments. It was to four different versions of myself, of my life. So the first quarter, it was out to the entrepreneur, then it went out to the mothers, and then the wives, and then your younger self. And in there, I say, I am worthy, I am deserving, and so I think I got that out of there because I didn't feel that I was worthy.
And so being able to talk to a professional that can help you think through a lot of it's, I don't know if your experience was this way or not, but a lot of therapists will ask the questions that will allow us to kind of come to our own realizations and conclusions. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So having somebody to help walk us through that can be really, really valuable.
Yeah, because sometimes, as an individual, you don't know what questions to ask that's probing for yourself to make that aha for yourself happen. And they are there as a professional for a reason, to get you to that place where now you understand exactly why you're here, and how you can overcome and get to the other side.
We had a Facebook user, and again, I'm sorry, I think Facebook is blocking names in this case, but said, my wife wanted me to go to therapy for 12 years now. I wasn't ready until a few months ago. And I can absolutely relate to that in one form or another. And I think to your earlier point, Katrina, there has to be a willingness on our part in order to go to that professional and actually get value from it. And that's really important to keep in mind. Candace says, I think we all have that thought, which is, what else can they tell me? But I completely look at many things very objectively now because of therapy. And yeah, absolutely great point, Candace. Having that objective outside feedback, especially from somebody who's trained, can be super, super valuable.
And definitely being ready. Like, some of us will go through things in our life and we would just run to therapy too. Like, some people don't go right away, or they think they need time, but then some people run too quick. Like, it's like that's going to help and do a quick fix in whatever is happening in your situation. So sometimes, like, they'll catch you on that too. Like, they know, like, no, you just came to try to get, like, okay, now we back together, right, and all that type of information. So
get ready to not only be open, but be ready to do the hard work. Put some time into it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate you making time to do the show today. I know that it's a big deal for you to, first of all, just be as open and vulnerable as you have been. But I really appreciate too, as we were talking about before, it's easy to, or it can be easy to get stuck in those challenges that we face. I think it's a beautiful thing that you figured out a way to move beyond that. Yes, these things happen. Yes, you have real feelings because of them. And yet you step forward, and yet you continue to build your business. And I appreciate that. I have a lot of respect for that, but I also appreciate your willingness to share kind of the practical takeaways from that experience as well.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, no, absolutely our privilege. And thank you for everybody that chimed in too. I really appreciate the engagement, the comments, the support today. And Shalina actually said from Facebook, she said, great talk. And I appreciate you listening in, Shalina. And it means a lot that everybody would chime in today the way that you have. One more time, Katrina, just remind everybody listening and watching where they can find and follow you online, if you will.
On IG and Facebook, Katrina Cross Photography, on both. And I also have Katrina Cross Boudoir on IG.
Perfect. And we'll make sure to link to the Boudoir account as well in the show notes at bokehpodcast.com. Rakia on Facebook says, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable. And that echoes my sentiments as well. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for chiming in. Have an absolutely beautiful Monday. We'll talk to you soon.